Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're finally here. We are finally caught up to season 3 of Free Dive to the Future. It's been so long in the making, but I'm so excited to finally be here. So this is episode 1. So there will be something on the community post on YouTube for this as well, and I'll include a copy of the link to that down below. But yeah, I made a bingo card. I had this in the Discord on Patreon. I've made a bingo card for season 3. I'm so excited. I guess it's not really a bingo card because it's going to be the same for everybody. Usually bingo cards are varied. It's more like a scavenger hunt, I guess, is reality. But I've got this card. There's a link to the YouTube community post where there's a copy of it that you can have. But I've got lots of things on here. And I've got this handy dandy little R2-D2 stamp from 1997 that is probably worth money if I didn't have the ink already taken out. But you know what? Who cares about antiques, right? So I'm gonna stamp my little free thing. Oh, it works. Look at that. Look at the R2-D2 stamp. Yes. So yeah, got it, ready to go. But I'm so excited, y'all. Basically the last month, I have been, season 2 ended like a month ago, and then I've been watching the OVA, Starting Days, Take Your Marks, Timeless Medley, Episode 0. It's been like an onslaught of free content, but I've loved it so much. I've really come to love this series quite a bit, if you can't tell. And I feel like I'm so late coming into the fandom, but y'all have been so welcoming. And now we're on season 3. I'm very curious about this season for a number of reasons. It's been noted in previous reactions and in previous comment sections that the art direction or the direction of the show has gone through like a series of 3 changes. This is the 3rd change. Like seasons 1 and 2 were under the same art director, and so was the OVA. And then Starting Days and Timeless Medley and Take Your Marks started to transition to the 2nd phase, and you can tell there's like a tone difference. And then with episode 0, you can tell there's a tone difference, and it's a new art direction. So it still feels like episode 0, you could tell was a little bit different, but it still felt like Free. And I kind of am okay with them taking a different art direction because it's kind of like Free itself. We've transitioned from one year to the next. So it's kind of like we've closed one door, now we're opening another. I've had several people say that season 3 is their least favorite, which has me curious as to why. So don't tell me yet. Don't spoil me, but I want to see how this season goes, and then it will be interesting. I know there's Road to the Future, which is the movie after this season's over. So that'll be kind of what we conclude on before we do our live stream for Free, and that's going to be a crazy live stream, I can tell already. But I have a feeling that during the live stream, we're going to have a big discussion about the seasons and why people chose certain ones over others and what you liked and disliked about them. So it's going to be interesting. But I'm really excited for season 3. I like these new characters. There's so much we can do with them. I'm really curious as to what will happen. But yeah, I'm going to set my little bingo card aside for this episode, and then afterwards we'll come back to it and see if anything happened. And I guess if I black it out, then I'll just make a new one. But, oh guys, it's time. I'm ready. So yeah, without further ado, we are going to start season 3 of Free Dive to the Future. Sprouting Dive Start. Their episode titles are always so strange for this series, but it's become endearing at this point. So yeah, we're going to start that here, guys, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Oh, you guys. Oh, y'all. This was a lot of fun. So much has happened. And honestly, man, if you did not watch the movies, the OVA, and episode 0 before going into this series, you would have missed out on so much. Like, granted, they explain enough of it, they backtrack enough of it here to establish, I like that they used the coffee shop scene as kind of a retracking or refresher. If you didn't know who Asahi was or Akuya, if you didn't know who those 2 characters were, they were like, okay, cool, you don't know who Asahi and Akuya are? That's fine. Here's some backstory. And they're like, oh, remember when Akuya went to America since 8th grade? Remember when Asahi went to a different high school? Like, they touch base on everything so you know who these characters are. But man, I feel like if you didn't watch the movies and you didn't watch the specials, you wouldn't have nearly the context. Like the fact that Sosuke knows who Akuya is and knows how good of a swimmer he is. Like the fact that Asahi and Kasumi have this relationship. Like Mako and Haru moving to Tokyo and getting their apartment and everything. Like you wouldn't be privy to all this extra knowledge. So I'm so glad that I was able to watch the movies before jumping into this series, because I would be kind of lost to this episode. And those movies, the one thing I've loved about Free is that the movies add so much to the canon story. Like they're not just filler, they actually have a point. And I love that. So, oh, there's so much good stuff in this episode. Okay, so first, I love the idea that we're tying back to season 1. We're coming full circle with this. Of Haru asking, what happens when I turn 20? Like, because at this point they're probably 17 or 18, right? He's like, I got 2 more years. He'll probably be in college longer than that. But he's like, so I originally thought in high school that once I hit 20, I was going to be ordinary. But now that I'm in college, I'm going to be older than 20 when I'm done. So am I really going to be ordinary or not? And I love that it transitions from Haru questioning that and Mako being like, hey, remember when you said that? What do you think now? And he can't give him an answer. I love that it transitions from that to Akuya saying, I will never be ordinary. I love that like dichotomy between the two already, because Akuya and Haru on the surface seem very similar characters. Like they're both more introverted and quiet. But Haru, to make a good contrast to Akuya still seems very closed off and withdrawn, even with Hiyori there, which we'll talk about Hiyori in a minute. But even with Hiyori there, Akuya still seems kind of withdrawn and kind of like angsty. And his voice actor is the same voice actor for Tsukishima from Haikyuu. So perfect voice casting there. Like I can already tell that that's going to lead to some good voice acting moments later on, I'm sure. But Haru was in a really good place this episode. Like, I felt, other than the very end, when he was kind of being like, I thought I saw Akuya, so what do I do now? Do I go up and talk to him? What do I do? Other than that last moment in the episode, like, Haru was, like, smiling. He was happy Asahi is there when they, like, bumped elbows. I was like, it reminded me of, like, Ren and Sosuke. Like, Haru was happy to see Asahi. I still love that Asahi is like, hey, did you know Kasumi's here too? And Haru's like, yeah, I already knew that. Like, because he's like, Kasumi's a little too handsy for me. I love that Haru doesn't have an animosity against Kasumi. He's just kind of like, oh yeah, he's here too. But I love that he instantly was so receptive of Asahi, and like they just all met at that coffee shop with Mako and just all like, and I love that Mako got really concerned for a second when it wasn't Haru on the phone. He's like, who is this? And they're like, oh, don't you know Kasumi's here too? And Mako's like, seriously, what's going on? And then they're like, oh, Asahi's too. And he's like, oh, that Asahi? I love that. And they got to meet up and reminisce. Like, that's such like if you've had friends from high school and you meet back up. Like, I had a friend from high school that I did meet up with in college. And it was kind of that same thing. Like, we hadn't seen each other in a couple of years. It was like, oh, like I went to a 2-year college before a 4-year college in the U.S. And so I didn't see, and the person that I'd gone to high school went straight to that 4 years. So there was 2 years where I didn't see them. And then I met them at the university and I was like, oh, hey, we haven't seen each other in a couple of years. What's been happening? And then we got to catch up. And so that totally relatable. But yeah, there's all of that going on. Mako I'm curious because I'm assuming Tokyo's a big city. So obviously there's different universities there. And Hikaida is where Haru and Asahi are going. And Mikashiba! Captain Mikashiba! I love that we aren't done with him. I like to think that, I guess it's canon now, that Mikashiba, the scout being there at, in season 2, scouted Haru for that university. I love that. I absolutely love that Coach Mikashiba is going to be in this. That's going to be so cool. But I'm wondering if Akuya maybe is at the same university as Mako. That would be kind of neat. If Mako and Akuya get to kind of meet up again, because they kind of missed each other in this episode. But, yeah, Hiyori, I don't know much about Hiyori yet. In the comments, a lot of you have been like, Hiyori. like no one has spoiled me, which thank you for not spoiling, but a lot of you have given me those vibes of, So, already, Hiyori, what a salty wench. I'm He yandere for Akuya? I'm thinking he might be yandere for Akuya. That's going to be an interesting dynamic because so far, I mean, Rin at the very beginning of season 2, Rin was kind of like that with Haru for Rin. He was like, don't get in Rin's way and don't be holding Rin back. And Sosuke was like that, which Sosuke's mellowed in this series since then. But Hiyori has kind of those same vibes. So I'm wondering if Hiyori is all aboard the Akuya train. It seems like he is. He's like calling him cute and being all like possessive with him, kind of. That's going to be interesting. Very interesting. So yeah, we'll have to see where that goes. But Sosuke, speaking of Sosuke, his shoulder, the doctor telling him that he can swim a little bit. So that's cool. So I'm wondering if he's gotten his surgery yet, or if he's just getting ready to have surgery and the doctor's like, take it easy, but you can swim a little bit, and that's fine. But I love that he's going back to Samazuka and helping coach them. And his brother, Kazuma. Oh my god, like, that was maybe one of the most genuine and wholesome, like, sibling scenes I've seen in an anime in a while. Like, just a genuine, like, the brother being like, oh, I'm taking over the restaurant. I'm going to rename it. And he's like, oh, really? That's cheeky. And he's like, hell yeah, it is. And I'm like, I love this dynamic between Sosuke and his brother. Like, if that's the only time we ever see him, that's still so cool. And, of course, Rin writing letters, or Sosuke writing letters to Rin and being like, because you know that Sosuke has a lot he wants to tell Rin about Haru being at the college and about that, but he's like, what should I say? And I felt bad for a second because Asahi said that he wrote Haru letters, and Haru's like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't write you back. But honestly, I think Rin touched on it in the Starting Days movie that Haru's not exactly a letter writer, so that kind of makes sense. But I felt a little bad for Asahi there. But yeah, there was that. And then speaking of Rin, so much happened in this episode. Speaking of Rin, him being in Australia, I love that they're speaking English. That was one of my favorite things about episode 11 of season 2. And then there's this coach Mihail, who has lived in Japan, so he can speak Japanese. Mihail, I don't know, is that Russian? Is it? I need to see what that is. But I like that he's kind of scouting Rin. And then there's this dark-haired man that was watching Haru, so I'm like, I wonder if they're like rival coaches that are trying to recruit each of them, or if they're both scouts for the national team, or how that works. Either way, I loved when we had the parallel of Haru and Rin swimming next to each other. That was, even though they weren't really next to each other, it was like, in spirit, Rin and Haru were spurning each other on. They were edging each other on to do their very best. And it was kind of like they were competing against one another. And that was kind of sad there at the end when Haru looks one way and Rin looks the other, and neither of them are there on the net. Yet! We're going to have tournaments, and I'm so ready. I'm so excited. I love this already. But yeah, so much happening this episode. And then we cut back to, bless our hearts, Nagisa and Rei. So, Rei being captain now, as we've established in the prior movies and that, Rei being captain. At Nagisa, I want to say that Nagisa, not only in this series, he looks a little older, which he's a third year now. He looks a little older, but he sounds a little more mature too. And I noticed that his voice was a little bit deeper. And I was like, that's a really cool, subtle thing that the show has done to show that time has passed. Because they've done that, I feel like with Nagisa and Haru especially this episode, there's been that sign of time passing. With Haru, it's going back to the motif of him explaining how the water works and becoming ordinary, and he's slowly changing his mind about that maybe. I love that, but I also love that Nagisa is getting a little more mature, and it's like, oh, that's so cool that we get to see him grow up. And we got our 3 new members. All these new characters they're introducing, like, it's going to take me a little bit to memorize their names. So, the one does freestyle, the light-haired guy does freestyle, which is cool, so he'll replace Haru. And then the second guy, it said, swims all strokes. The dark, lanky-haired guy kind of looks like Asahi from Haikyuu a little bit. Swims all strokes. That's a cool, like, it's kind of like a counter to Rei that he already knew how to swim all the different strokes. So that's cool. He could do a backstroke if he needed to. And then there's this other character, which I think is a girl, which is kind of cool because they established in Starting Days that the swim teams were kind of co-ed. So I guess that there could be a girl swimmer. It's either a girl or it's a very shy boy. But the voice kind of sounded feminine, so I don't know. But it seemed like it was a girl. that was a swimmer there, which would be kind of cool. Like, yes, absolutely. So I'm curious. I'm very curious, which I'm guessing, like Nagisa and Ray, they're not going to turn down anybody in the club. They're like, yes, come to this club, please. So I'm really curious, but I love that we have these 3 new swimmers and that Ray and Nagisa are going to have to teach them the ropes and they were trying to send Mako pictures. Like, I love that so much. But, oh, guys, I really liked this episode. This did a very good job of setting up new characters, kind of figuring out we have our stakes. You've got to get qualified to be on the national team. That's the goal. Cool. And you know Haru is going to strive for this goal too because Rin's on the national team. So, and I love that when Asahi was like, oh, are you practicing all these strokes? And, oh, are you still just like, I only do freestyle? And what character growth? That Haru is like, no, I've been practicing other strokes. But when I'm serious, I'll only do free. And it's like Haru practicing because he probably realizes, like Ray, that he's going to have to up his game. If Haru has to swim other strokes, that's going to be interesting because what progress we've made from Haru 2 seasons ago that was like, no, free only, to being like, if I'm going to be on the national stage with Rin, I got to do this. Oh man, you guys. So let's do this bingo card. I got to finish this out. All right. I have not seen Sosuke stretching his shoulder. Momo did bring up stag beetles. Momo brought up Pyonsuke at the very beginning. So yes, please. Rin and Haru tie in a swim meet. I'm not going to call this practice round a tie because they weren't technically against each other. Ominous new character foreshadowed. That coach, the dark-haired coach at the very end, he looks ominous. So we're going to say that was foreshadowing. Hiyori openly flirting with Akuya. Did he openly flirt with them? He said that those other guys were just copies of Kuya. I'm not going to call it that yet. Go goes on a date. No. The trees haven't made an appearance. Ooh, Japanese character speaks in English. Yep, Rin talked to the Australian guy. Yes. Bird of Fate made the appearance. He did make the appearance. Yes. And then, let me see. Anything else yet? Kasumi has not gotten handsy yet. Oh, Mako reaches for Haru's hand coming out of the pool. We got that. That was like right, and I love that Haru like tipped him into the pool. He was like, "No, we got to practice swimming." I think that's about it so far. Cool. So, man, in one episode, we got like 5. No bingos yet, but we got 5 of those in an episode. So. Yeah, I'm thinking by halfway through I might have to make a new one with new predictions for the rest of the season. We shall see. But, oh guys, this was such a fun episode. I really liked this. This was a great start. I'm so intrigued to see how Akuya and Hiyori are going to interact with everybody. And to see Rin interacting more with the Australian team, to see what's going on with Sosuke, to see these new swimmers at Iwatobi. I already love that Haru and Asahi have this great dynamic again. And Kasumi and Mako are there. I'm so intrigued. And I'm curious to know who the other, because if they have a relay team, obviously Haru and Asahi are going to be together. I'm going to guess Mikashiba, the captain, is going to be like, I'm on your team. So I'm curious who the 4th person will be. But, if they even do relay, they may not, It's a college team, so it may be a little different. But, oh guys, in any case, I'm already hyped for this season. I liked how this series has started off. Again, if you hadn't watched the movies or the specials leading up to this, it probably would be really confusing, but I feel like having watched all that, it just flows right into the series. So it just organically goes right into it, and I love that. So yeah, that's good to me. Off to a good start. So we shall see. So please feel free to comment down below. Please no spoilers, but I'm curious to know your thoughts about the episode. But yeah, next week we'll come back and do episode 2 of Swim Dive to the Future. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to y'all again soon.